Liam, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Gav. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Not at all. So we're sat here in the headquarters of the Rugby Football League in Manchester. It's a nice building.
It is. We've been here a few years now, so we've moved from Leeds. We've got some great facilities. The Etihad Stadium's just sat behind us where Man City play.
Well, I saw that when we came in. Yeah, I didn't really want to look at it, that football teams. Being a Leeds United fan, thought, who are these guys in this stadium?
But no, the facilities are second to none. As you've seen, we had a quick tour around, didn't we, in terms of the running track and the gym and with plenty of athletes who are going to the Olympics in a few months running around there. So it's we're among good company, I'd say.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Really great. I don't want to embarrass you, but you are one of the top referees for rugby league, which is a great sport. I love rugby league. Where do you start the journey of becoming a ref? How do you become a referee?
You know what, honestly, I ask myself that quite frequently. Genuinely, by accident. So when I grew up, I never intended on being a referee. I was a rugby league fan when I was younger. I played at high school, all the way through high school at my local school. Played at a couple of clubs locally, but was never really good enough to make it professional. I was okay, mediocre, middle of the road, but certainly never good enough to play professional. But I loved the sport, as well as football and cricket. I was one of them at school. I played plenty of sports, master of none, but loved the team environment, loved playing in school. At school, I had every intention to my career was going to be. I was okay in terms of education. My intention was to become a solicitor, leave school, do my law degree. Left high school, went to college. Every intention, law degree, LPC, become a solicitor, as you'll know. But all that time, I was 16. I was asked to referee a rugby league match. I said, "Oh, can you just pick up the whistle and do it as a favour, really?"
Just a random request.
Random request. Yeah, my brother played, and they were looking for a referee at a festival. Did it, give it a go, and absolutely loved it.
Did you? Wow.
Running around, making decisions, being part of in the middle of a game that I love. Really enjoyed it. I got adrenaline rush from it. I think a couple of weeks later, did a local course, signed up, was qualified. But again, if I'm honest, a bit of pocket money here and there. My friends were working at McDonald's or earning next to nothing below minimum wage, where I'm thinking I can earn a bit of pocket money here, getting up and refereeing some games on a Sunday. Went from there again with absolutely no aspiration to be a Super League referee, but it transpired from there really. Took opportunities, right place, right time. Sometimes as life usually ends up being that way, and I've never looked back really from it being I'll give it a go as a favour to somebody to 15 years later actually being sat here and it's my full-time job. It's
funny, isn't it?
Some transition.
Absolutely. What was it, do you think, about that first game then, that first experience, which did it for you?
I think it was the adrenaline. I say this to people, people say, why would you put yourself through that? What getting stick from crowds or parents on a touchline as it was then. But it was just the adrenaline of making decisions and running around and testing yourself. And almost I always say this to people, that you must almost want yourself to suffer a little bit, in the sense of that going to that, putting yourself in them environments. But you find a lot out about yourself when you do that, and that stood me in good stead for life, because I try not to take things too personally. I've got a pretty thick skin, I would say. But that stood me in good stead with life and challenges that brings.
Well, I think to be a referee at any level, maybe it's even worse at grassroots level than it is at the top.
Yeah, definitely.
But to be a referee at any level, like the resilience you must need to do it, that is the obvious question to a referee. Why? Why would you put yourself through it?
Yeah, and it's so the flip side to that is that I had a decision to make when for that I asked myself that very question. So I'd finished uni, got my law degree, and I was working at a law firm in Manchester. Was about to start my LPC full time with them, and a job came up, full time referee. At that point, I'd been refereeing the championship. So I had a big decision to make when I was 21. What do I do? Do I kind of go down this path of do my dream, so to speak, of give this refereeing a go and see where it would take me? Or do I do probably what I would say was the safer route at the time? Training contract, become a solicitor, what my plan always was. And I remember speaking to my dad, and he said, why would you ever want to put yourself in them arenas and be be the centre of attention and having to put yourself through that. Your life's just completely different. But I can honestly say is that it's the moment it gives you of being involved in a sport where you can run out in a stadium, 75,000 people at Wembley, Old Trafford, and be in the middle of a sport that you love. It's a drug that that's what keeps you coming back. It's the running out the tunnel at Old Trafford, here in Jerusalem, and the hairs on your back of your neck standing up. It gives you that tingling feeling. There's a lot of bad things that come with it, but for me, what keeps me coming back and why do I do it? It's the good moments and the fantastic moments that the sport has given me far outweighs any negatives.
Really, that's interesting. Well, let's talk about that, because your rise as a referee has been amazing. Like, so good, hasn't it? Like, you're 28 now.
28, yeah.
28 years old, and you've already done, is it 3 grand finals? Have you done 3?
3 grand finals, yeah. Very.
So for anyone who doesn't follow or watch rugby league, that's the pinnacle game of the rugby league competition, isn't it? What, 60, 70,000 people at Old Trafford usually?
Yeah, they're the big ones. That's the climax of the season. So generally, grand final, you've got the 2 best teams who are competing at the end of the season. And the grand final is no second chances. There's a winner and a loser. So the pressure involved in them games is there's a champion and there's a team that are absolutely gutted that they've lost on the biggest stage of them all. So
and you could be a big part of.
Absolutely,
that.
Yeah, and we hope not to be, and that's the biggest challenge. The ideal scenario is you come out and nobody's talking about the referee. It doesn't always work like that. The way the game is, you've got to make big decisions. With potentially, as I've said, 75,000 people, millions potentially watching at home with different replays. That can be a challenge as well.
Yeah.
But we have split seconds to make decisions, and that's the challenging side to it. That's the challenging.
Tell us, Liam, then. So if it's a grand final on a Saturday, there's going to be 70,000 people there. What time's kick-off usually? Is it like 3 o'clock?
6 o'clock usually.
Oh,
so
6
yeah,
p.m.
so it's
Yeah,
just at
that's
that
right.
period when it's starting to go dark. It's under the floodlights. It's that almost that romantic dark game at Old Trafford.
So what's the team of referees? It'll be yourself, 2 touch judges.
Yep.
So is there 3 of you? Or is there
There's
more?
3 of us on field. So with the referee, 2 touch judges, and you'll have a reserve referee who's like the 4th official in football, effectively. Yeah. And then we've got the video referee who's in the truck or in Winslow, as it is, in a studio.
So in Old Trafford, you've got the 2 dressing rooms, the home and away, with the both teams in, all the players getting pumped up, ready to go. You'll have your own area.
Yeah.
Just talk us through that, like 20 minutes or half an hour before you go on. You're having like a little pep talk with your touch judges, and what do you say to yourself? Or do you have a routine, any superstitions?
I try to keep it as relaxed as I possibly can, because the tension on the field, the tension around the game, the build up to the game all week is obviously massive. So I think sometimes you can be in danger of ramping up too much, and you get to a point where if you're making it too pressurised,
you're too pumped up.
You won't get the best out of your team. So part of my role as the leader of that team on a match day, certainly on a big game like that, is trying to keep the officials relaxed. A lot of the officials we've worked with countless times, so we know how each other work. But that 20 minutes, you have the warm up, you have the warm up lap, you come back in, and it's the final messages really. And I always say to people, if I make a mistake on the game, there's not 26 teammates who's going to pat me on the back and say, "Oh, it's all right, come on, let's get on with it. Don't worry about it," kind of thing. It's quite the opposite,
to say the least.
But we are a team in a team, so we've got guys who we keep each other going in terms of little tip-offs along the way and little words of wisdom. That we've got the video referees watching and coming in when we need that assistance as well. So it's the teamwork is genuinely is outstanding between us.
How nervous are you?
I used to be a lot more. So I think experience is a big one. I think when you do your first big game, so I was fortunate to do the Challenge Cup final in 2020, which was in COVID. It's my first Challenge Cup final. So you imagine walking out at Wembley and you're thinking as a kid growing up, oh, the stadium's going to be full and it's the crowd and nobody there. Right. So it wasn't. So I actually think that was a good thing in some ways.
Yeah, that's not a bad start, is it, actually?
So it felt like it was a game that was behind closed doors, effectively, but it was still the Challenge Cup final of 2 big clubs going out for it, and it was going to lift the trophy at the end. But for me, that was a kind of a good first hit out of actually being involved in a final, but without having maybe all the crowd and everything that comes with that. So yeah, in terms of, do you get nervous? Absolutely. Before a big game, you get I'd say it's excitement as well. So I did the World Cup Challenge a few weeks ago, and it's I think if you didn't get them butterflies as you're walking out the tunnel, then you shouldn't really be there.
Yeah,
This
agreed.
is the pinnacle of our sport. Like, you should be excited. You should be a little bit nervous. I think nerves are good. So any referee that tells you, oh yeah, I don't get a little bit of a bit of excitement or butterflies, whatever you want to call it, I'd say that maybe being a little bit liberal with the truth. But no, that in some ways the walking out is the best bit. That's it, when it's all on. It's when it's all on. It's the fireworks have just stopped. It's you're on your own then. It's the game's on. It's that you get that feeling from the players. It's genuine. People say but it's the best seat in the house. It really is.
Really, that's so interesting. Like, I can feel the excitement from you as you paint the picture of walking out the tunnel. I can imagine that, having watched grand finals on the TV, and like you say, the fireworks, the crowd, the music, and you're leading the teams out, aren't you? You're at the front as well, yeah.
Yeah, well, the grand final was slightly behind them, so we let the teams go, and then we're the last ones out to line up. So it's but then it's the.
I think I'm thinking of football when the ref comes out first.
Yeah,
and
they
picks
got
the ball
football.
off the,
like the FA Cup final. I think the referee's the first one, which I think must be worse actually, because you're the first person effectively to.
Yeah, and all the
see
fans
everybody.
like, we're not here to see you.
yeah, but it's when people ask, that is the reason we do it. That is, everyone will tell you I'm sure that there's a lot of negatives and a lot of bad parts to it as well, which I'm sure we'll touch on. But there's the best bit of it is being involved in that sport, and then massive matches. But even when you come off and you've done a good job, like what people decide we don't see when we come finish the game, the team's lifted the trophy, we get our medals, come in, and the relief when you just get in the changing room.
Is that the overriding feeling when the three of you get back into your changing room and you've finished a game, it's gone smoothly? It's like, oh,
yeah, relief.
Thank God for that.
Relief.
Is it?
Because the excitement, when you get the appointment, that's the honour. That's the mate. Oh, you've been appointed. It's that the week. Then you just need the game to go well. The game's got to go well, and it is a sense of for that 80 minutes you're in the middle, you just focused on getting the big decisions right, and come off the game at the end of the game. There's no massive controversy. People talking about referees, people talking about decisions in the game. If you come off at the end of it and then actually comms kit goes off and you turn your phone on and it's not absolutely going mental, it's you've done all right.
It's funny, isn't it? 'Cause it's an unusual role in a way. Like, to go out in front of so many people on such a big stage, you're doing the opposite of making a name for yourself. You really don't want to make a name for yourself in some ways, don't you? Because it's more subtle than that. You don't want to be talked about.
Absolutely.
You don't want your phone going off like mad. You don't want players coming up to you afterwards. It's all about the teams. You slip off in the shadow.
Exactly. It's when people say that one of the lines you get in all sports as well, it's the referee, Liam Moore, whoever it may be, he just wants to be the centre of attention. I can absolutely categorically say that he's anything but. If I can work into the background and let the players just play and do their thing and just be literally almost a passenger in it, then great. It's the easiest job in the world when you can just, all you have to do is facilitate a game. It's when you need to referee it. That's when it becomes a little bit more difficult.
Yes, I was just thinking that, the difference between facilitating and refereeing, because it almost reminds me in a business environment of being the chair.
Absolutely.
So if you're a chair of a board, I would say your role is to facilitate. It's not to rule the meeting, allow other people to speak, make sure everyone's had fair airtime, cover all the agenda, and facilitate it all working. And that's a dream outcome, really. And Absolutely. I suppose that's the same refereeing, isn't it? Facilitate the game, nice and smooth, no big issues, not in the limelight, come off, deep breath, job done.
So we have generally you go into a game with a plan A. Now the plan A is players play, you have to step in when you need to, but little involvement, and actually, hopefully, in an ideal world, get decisions right, give them the room to play, get a good speed in the ruck, and you come off and there's no one talking about you and it's happy days. The flip side to that is, and this has happened quite a few times, it happened a couple of weeks ago, the first tackle of the game results in a red card. Now,
that's a nightmare scenario, though, isn't it, for you?
Somebody's hitting the head, someone's dangerous tackle, whatever it may be, but suddenly plan A then goes out the window.
Gone, yeah.
Because it can't. Then you've got a team playing with 12 players. You've got obviously a big decision already in the game, big involvement as a referee. So you can go in with plan A, but actually it doesn't always happen like that. And for whatever reason, it's that you've got to be able to adapt pretty quickly.
Well, that strikes me that. So let's use that example, because you start a game, and we've talked about the glamorous end of the games you referee, the grand finals, 70,000 people, but they're not all like that, are they?
Absolutely not. Unfortunately not.
No. But you go with plan A, which is to be in the background, facilitate, like you say, good speed of the ruck, but let's not get too involved if I can help it.
Yeah.
But like, when you start a game, much like if you start a presentation or you start a board meeting or whatever it might be, there's a little bit of warming up. You might not be quite as sharp. You're warming up, get the conversations going, and you get into flow. But if you have a high tackle on minute 1, which might be a red card, you've got to be sharp right from the off, haven't you, I suppose? You haven't really got the ability just to ease yourself into it, have you? Because, like you say, there could be an incident.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's the ideal is you get through a few sets. We talk as referees, get through a few sets and see where the game's challenging you and see what the players are presenting you with, really. But there's the anomaly to that is that, and I can think of an example this season where, we had a sin bin after 41 seconds. We had a couple of seasons before the first game of the season, the first tackle, we had a sin bin. Every player's running in, 26 players running in together in a brawl. So
right from the off.
You've got to adapt pretty quickly to that. But you're right. You can't just think, blow your whistle to kick off and
I'll just ease myself in.
A bit of warm up here. You've got to be on it from minute 1. The last thing I said to my team is, before we go out, just be ready for that first carry. As the first carry, anything could happen. It's when they're going to be the most. We've touched on already. They've had the last minute talks from the coaches, from the teams. They've been in the huddles. That's when they're going to be the most fired up. We had an incident a few years ago now with a player in the Super League Grand Final who got sent off in the first couple of minutes, for a punch to the head. And players are, it's testosterone in people's body. It's almost a passion. We've got to understand that. Is that so? Us as referees, we've got to be equally. We've got to be on it from minute 1 as well. And that's one of the biggest challenges. And I think that comes down to concentration as well.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting year, isn't it, for rugby league? I mean, with head injuries, the background of player safety, and we're just having a little chat off air then with an ex-player who was sort of talking about how it used to be a little bit. But safety in the game now is paramount, isn't it? Rightly so, but it's a hard balance when you've got 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 stone athletes crashing into each other.
Absolutely.
It's a hard balance, isn't it, for you as a ref, I imagine, to let the game flow, have the right speed, but so that it's a spectacle for the fans. There's some entertainment to it, and the game gets played as everyone wants it to be played, but also people not coming off on stretchers, head injuries, later repercussions. Hard balance.
It's a tough balance, and from a refereeing angle, it's as much as players have to adapt to change, we've had to adapt to change as well. We've done massive amount of work in the off season of looking through clips, working with the governing body in terms of understanding what they want to be a red card, what they want to be a yellow card, and we listen to clubs on that as well. The various stakeholders in the game, with the ambition at the end to make the game safer at all levels. So when players are retiring in the 30s, they can have an afterlife after rugby league where they don't need to worry about the brain health or potential repercussions of playing the sport that everybody loves.
Well, just on that, sorry to interrupt. So we're just speaking to an ex-player who, top player, big career, and he just shocked me with something he'd said, actually. We're chatting in reception, and he just said some of his mates who were in the game can't remember a lot of the games they played.
Absolutely.
And he said it's quite common. I went, really? It's quite common that a lot of my mates can't remember half the games they played in?
Yeah.
Like, wow, I didn't realise it was so prevalent.
Yeah, and the game's got a lot, certainly in recent years, the game's got a lot more safer in terms of...
I think this was 70s, 80s.
Correct, yeah. In terms of doctors, we've got HIAs now in terms of head injury assessments. The game has been as safe as it's ever been. However, we can't, as a sport, we can't stand still. We've got to make the game as safe as it possibly can be. And part of that is increasing sanctions, and a knock-on effect of a referee for that is, sadly, we're the ones stood in the middle of the field as the bad cop who has to show the red card or the yellow card. So we're the face of it in some ways, but as long as you know it's for the right reasons, and we've seen already, players have adapted. So a stat already from Super League. The first round of the Super League season, we had 14 cards in round one, which is over 6 games is pretty significant.
That's quite high, isn't it?
And a number of them were red cards as well.
So this is either players who have been sent off completely, their game's ended, or have been sent to the touchline for 10 minutes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 14 in round one. Now we've just finished round 5, and we had 2 sin bins in the whole round.
So that's the sign of people adapting to the new rules and people getting on board with it.
Exactly. And we're not saying that's the only metric in which you measure it. However, it's a fairly good gauge of players are adapting. And we can see that visibly in games. Players are adapting. But going back to your question, that raises challenges for referees. We've got to adapt as well as the players. And the game is different to what it is when I started refereeing. It's evolved over time. And actually, this off-season in particular, I go as far as saying it's probably the biggest change we've seen in the sport and how it's refereed that I've seen in my time as being a referee. So that gives you some kind of idea of how significant the off-season has been.
Let's talk about the dark side of refereeing then. We touched on it a little bit before of the it's not all glamorous, and which of course is the case with any job, I suppose, but I feel like being a referee, there is a fairly significant dark side. So I want to talk about abuse of referees. Here's my past experience of abuse. So, not that I've done any, by the way. So, I remember being stood on the terraces of Bradford Bulls at Odsall, which for anyone who hasn't been is a unique place, isn't it? An environment. It's very working class. A lot of men in the 50s and without stereotyping, but Yorkshire. And I remember being stood on there as the referee. Surname Ganson.
Yep, Steve Ganson.
Steve Ganson.
Yep.
And I'm going to attempt to do an impression now. Every game you went to, you'd hear, "Get him on side, Ganson," or "Forward." Every game, without fail.
Yeah.
You'd have a group of people shouting, "Get him on side," or "Forward." I'm like, do people just shout this just for the theatre now? Or did they actually mean it? But, I mean, that's quite light abuse, I'd say, or feedback, let's say.
Yeah.
But what is the abuse like towards you as a elite Super League referee? What does it look and feel like from your point of view?
2 parts to it, I'd say. Is the first one on the field. Actually, you've touched on some of the bits there in terms of the. I almost describe that as almost the pantomime part of it.
It is a bit.
The forward and the get them on side. That's almost like it's entertaining in some ways.
That's a good way of describing it, actually. A bit of pantomime.
Bit of a pantomime, and you're the pantomime villain in the middle, or portrayed to be the pantomime villain. And the players. So the players generally, on the whole, are brilliant. The respect shown to us on the field, I would say, is very good in terms of, obviously there's always the odd player, odd incident that's the anomaly to that. But generally as a whole, we're treated with respect. They speak to us in the right way. We speak to them. An example of that is, sometimes I went out for a meal in the off season actually in Manchester. Came across a player who was actually playing for St Helens actually at that point. Came over to the table. How you doing, sir? And shook my hand
really?
in front of my wife as well. So which is quite insane. But because I've refereed that player for a long time, it's ingrained in the respect of it. He calls me sir.
That's really nice, isn't it?
Even though he knows my name's Liam and he knows me, but it's just an almost force of habit of that, sir. It's just whatever it may be, whether it be just habit or muscle memory, whatever it may be.
I think that's testament to you, Liam, as well. For someone to approach you outside of the pitch, a player, and refer to you as sir, I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, and I was laughing and joking with him on it and say, you don't need to call me sir off the field, and it's but that's just an example I give of how rugby league, in my opinion, the players and the coaches as well in that there is respect there for us. Not saying they always agree with us, by the way. We have plenty of disagreements, and not saying we get everything right, but that mutual respect is there in rugby league, and I think that's something from my point of view that we should cherish that and keep hold and do our best to keep hold of it. Yeah. So the players, the bit that is the difficulty and the dark side, which is probably a good way of referring to it, is the other things, which is, so you could ref a game on a Friday night, and it could be a decision in the game, a controversial decision, and people are talking about you. Now, you can live with that So you could be trending number 1 in the UK on Twitter. My name, Liam Moore.
Have you been there?
Yeah,
Have you?
yeah.
Trending
On a
number 1?
Thursday, Friday night, you could be trending in
Yeah.
the top 5 on social media, on Twitter, whatever it may be. People, saying pretty bad things about you, but I'm pretty thick-skinned. The knock-on effect is that we're human as well, and although I'm probably almost accustomed to it in many ways over years of understanding it, my wife, it doesn't particularly, it's not nice for her to see people putting comments about husband. Equally, my parents, your family, they see things as well. It's the things that go out that people don't see. People don't think about the effects of the keyboard warriors of putting a comment or sending a direct message that's happened, death threats of examples.
Have you had that?
Yeah, over the years, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, over the years, over decisions, and whether that is how I know people deal with it in different ways. I've not been in terms of wanting to come out with things like that, because it's not nice for your family, particularly to see stuff like that in the media. But in terms of the dark side, it's clearly there. It's clearly there, and it's you've got to be able to deal with that. And as I think I touched on earlier, you turn on your phone, you get direct messages from people. You've got to ignore a lot of it. But you've got to accept as well that you are in the public spotlight, and that is sadly a negative part that comes with the job. But people, you've got to be pretty mentally strong to deal with that.
So in fact, it's not necessarily the abuse you might get. Well, certainly not on the field, by the sounds of it, from the players. Some pantomime in the stadium, but I suspect, is there a darker side to what happens in the stadium when you're going into the tunnel at half time, or can you get a little bit there?
Yeah, there is, and listen, on some games it can be pretty intense as well, some of the criticism, but I think you always feel that it's almost it's in the game, so to speak. I think the bit that is the worst bit, it's when people are going out the way to message you privately and message, certainly some pretty horrific examples in the past, not just with me, but with other referees. I'll tell you examples as well. Now that's the bit that does impact you a little bit more, and that's the tough bit. But as I said, not as much. I'm not saying that I completely. No one's immune from it. No one likes to read stuff like that. But it's more. I worry more about my family seeing it and how that affects my family, because it's okay me saying, oh well, yeah, just ignore it. I'm used to it, and I'm thick-skinned, and I'm a referee, etc. But my mum and dad aren't. My wife is a teacher at school. She's not trained in dealing with that kind of thing. So it's pretty tough. That side of it can be pretty tough.
It's hard, isn't it? Have you changed the way that you've dealt with that? I mean, did you, back in the day, I suppose, when you're starting out on your journey, did you ever feel like you tried to justify it, or did you reply to a few and say, well, actually, let me tell you why I made that decision? Or do you just, have you always been pretty good at just block it out, don't bother reading it?
Not really, no. In terms of, I think some of it, in terms of, you do, there has been times when I felt like going back, in terms of, especially if you know a decision's right, or something that they're saying is clearly factually wrong, then you do, there's the temptation to go back and fire back, but actually then you become the story. So then the story is all Liam Moore goes on rant at fan, and as referees generally, you don't have a right to reply. That's how it works. Apart from internally, you can press things, but certainly social media, for example, I would never go back at somebody, even if I knew they was particularly wrong. The challenge to that is obviously as well, if on social media, so you question in terms of how do I deal with it. At the start, when I was young, I was a 22, 23-year-old lad when I was in Super League. Probably didn't have the experience or the life experience even to deal with that, so you could get tweets, etc. And I'd read the tweets and I'd look at things on social media. What were people saying about you? Because actually, it's you're only human. You kind of want to know, don't you? Want to know what it's almost a human instinct. You want to know what that person thinks. You want to know what people are saying.
Well, we all want to be liked, don't we?
Of course we do.
Well? We want to be liked ultimately and accepted by people. So I can see the want to. Oh, let me just have a look at that. Even though it's strangers, it's very
absolutely
human.
But now I think as with that life experience and with the experience of being in the middle, I keep away from that now. Some of my friends will often send me send me pictures of things, or
they?
yeah, they'll often send me like as a daft things that fans have put on, or relevant people have put on, or where I'm trending. Like, but obviously I don't look at that.
So this is your mates from home or school?
Yeah,
who like
from
to keep
school.
your feet on the ground.
But they see it as entertaining. You see, so it's they like to keep it as a bit of banter as well. But it's So I know that things go on, but one thing experience has given me, I don't go looking for it. And your point about, you want to be liked, I think you've got to realise as a referee, and that's one thing that I've done over the years, is you're not going to be liked and you're not always going to be popular, because come at the end of the game, there's going to be one team that think you're okay and the one team that think you're the worst referee in the world. So it's understanding that. It's understanding that as a referee, you're in the environment and in a position where you're not always going to be popular, you're not always going to be liked. But actually, when you accept that and you go out there and think, I'm going to do the best job I possibly can on this field and do what I need to do to perform at my best. And once you accept that idea, you actually become a better referee. Yeah. And because you become less emotionally attached to what people think and spend more time and more energy on being the best you possibly can be.
Yeah, no, that's good. I can see that. Going back to your previous point about referees making it about them. So I watch a lot of football. I know you're we can't even mention your team, can we?
Well, that's not at the moment anyway. Give it a few years.
Well, we're Leeds United and Manchester United, aren't we? So you're a Man U fan, I'm Leeds, so it's hard for us to get into a room, but here we are. And by the way, I said we've both got fairly strong accents here, haven't we? So if anyone needs subtitles who's listening to this, by all means request those. I've forgotten where I'm going then. So yeah, in football, and the referees who, you do get the sense sometimes as a fan that some refs do want to make it about them. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but you watch a game sometimes and you think, this ref just wants to be star of the show here, like almost enjoying getting the yellow card out of his pocket, hold a really stiff arm up, and and it feels like that.
Yeah.
He wants it to be about him, which as a fan sort of rubs you up the wrong way because you don't feel like that should be the case. But I tell you, I do like in football. Michael Oliver is a top-level Premiership referee, isn't he? And he does sort of seem to tread that line of not making it about him, but also having the authority. And I imagine as a ref, Liam, that's a tough line to walk, isn't it? Because you need the authority. Like you're on a pitch with, big, strong, aggressive men in an aggressive sport. So you have to have some authority. But by the same token, you don't want to be that ref, do you? The fans and everyone watching, and even the players, I suppose, have a perception like, oh, this guy is just like the big I am here. Like, it's all about him, and which I think you can sometimes sense. Is that a fair point, do you think?
I think a little bit. I think it's a perception. I think it's definitely a perception in the sense of, I think certainly some of the best referees I've seen from other sports as well, not just in rugby league, are the ones that manage players the best and they look approachable. One thing, I don't like to be the head teacher type referee, almost wagging the finger of talking down to player. I like to be approachable. And actually, I think you get a better reaction from players like that way. And, I said to people now is that even sometimes if you get things wrong on a field, you can get a little bit more leniency from players if okay, well, I might have got that wrong, but, we can speak to him and he'll speak to us back in the right way.
The respect's there and they can see you trying.
Yeah, exactly. And the example you gave, Michael Oliver, I'd agree with that. I think is an excellent referee. I'm not sure Jem would have agreed after that, the Liverpool penalty at the end. But
well, that's my wife, by the way, everyone who's a Liverpool fan and is very sore about losing in the FA Cup to Manchester United.
But genuinely, I think, there's some fantastic referees, and I'm not always of the opinion that people go out there to be the centre of attention. Or some are more flamboyant than others. You've referenced the way they brandish cards, etc.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like they whip that yellow card out or the red and then almost enjoy giving it.
Yeah, and I think that's a perception. I think,
fair enough.
In terms of, I can honestly, from my point of view anyway, in terms of, I would hate to think that the fans would turn up and think, he's just got it on him today to be the centre of attention. Because as I've already explained, it's far from the truth of what you'd really want from a game and an ideal. If you can keep your cards in your pocket, then great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let me ask you about, so if you're in a game, in-game situation. You're running around the pitch. You've got 70,000 people watching. It's intense. Your emotions are high. We talked a little bit earlier. You do get nervous still because you care. Your heart beats up. Your senses are attuned. And something happens in a game, whether it's a tackle, high hit, or a try, has it got over the line or not, or whatever it might be, fine margins. But these things, Liam, happen at like a second. How do you have the confidence? How do you know you make the right decision? Do you very much go off instinct? How much are you making a decision right from your gut immediately? Or you have that gut feeling, but you give yourself you let your brain get involved just to analyse the situation a little bit, give yourself a breather. Just talk us through that moment, that tiny moment where something happens so quick and you're having to make such a big call, whether it's a try or a red card. Or the pressure there feels to me as an outsider very intense.
Absolutely, and a lot of it is gut instinct. I always say I'm a big believer in having a strong gut instinct, and usually, not always, your gut instinct is right. And whether how you see it the first time, the danger of referees, sometimes you can overthink decisions. Yeah. Instead of just giving the decision and having the courage or conviction to stick with that decision, you can overthink it. And whether that's a confidence thing, if it's you feel like you might have got a couple of other things wrong or whatever it may be, that can play on your mind as well. But the best referees, in my opinion, are the ones that can move on the quickest from decision to decision.
That's interesting. So instinct.
Absolutely. So the one decision you've made, right, that decision's gone now, on to the next decision. Just like as a team, you make a mistake, concede a try, concede a goal in football, you've got to go again. Right, let's go again now. And that's but as a referee, you're probably going through that process hundreds of times in a match because you're going from decision to decision constantly. I think the biggest challenge as being a referee is when you've made a mistake or you get the feeling you've made a mistake. So we have in Super League, whether it be a knock on, a ball steal, whatever it may be, there's a big screen in the ground, all the players are watching the screen, and you can know you've made a mistake.
Yeah, so this is very interesting. So this is where you've made a decision and there's a little bit of doubt just starts to creep in your mind thinking, did I get that quite right? Are you watching the big screen?
No, we're not doing. No, but the players are watching the screen.
Are watching
so they'll be watching and they'll be letting you know if it's incorrect or not. And that's the challenge. You see something split second, you make a decision, and then potentially everybody in the stadium can see that's the wrong decision.
It's so public though, isn't it? It's like no other job. It's so public.
The best way I could describe it is you're basically going on a field for 80 minutes and putting your whole faith in yourself. And it could be, you could have a perfect game, we've seen it, for 79 minutes, perfect game, not made a mistake. And it could be one decision that ends up ultimately defining who wins and loses that game. And that's the talking point.
When you get home on a night after a game, do you just crash out? Are you like, glass of wine, need to go to bed? Are you tired?
Believe it or not, it's the other way. Certainly
it?
on an intense game, certainly on the biggest matches, the adrenaline's pumping through your body. Yeah. So it's very difficult to sleep afterwards because you're at such a point of adrenaline. Obviously, you have caffeine before as well, which doesn't particularly help you. But you're at you're at that point, and it could be, sometimes they'll do a game and the game could finish at 10 o'clock, and it could be 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning before the time you can actually physically get to sleep.
Down from it all.
It's a massive high, so you've got to bring yourself down, and that's a big challenge in itself. I know players have similar issues in terms of that, but as a referee, it's a massive adrenaline rush. So to bring yourself down from that is often a challenge.
It's interesting, just going back to what you said about making a decision and leaving that decision there before you go on to the next one and not hanging on to the feelings of it or the rightness or wrongness of it. Speaking to Jack Law, the Olympic diver, on a podcast previously, and he was talking about how do a dive, good or bad, so whether you kill it over 100 points or, belly flop, his belly flops are not like our belly flops. Yeah. But either or, do it, move on, forget it, just execute the process almost. But what I hadn't appreciated as being a ref, which is quite interesting, is, like you rightly say, in an 80-minute game, you've got to do that 100 times over, probably. Decision, make it, leave it. But I suppose the pace of the game helps with that, doesn't it? Because you haven't got much chance to ruminate over anything, have you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of it. You move on to the next decision. So suddenly, within 30 seconds, you could have another big decision to make. So you do park it and naturally, almost subconsciously, move on pretty quickly. The challenge is certainly in a close game where the stakes are high, you'd be, everybody knows it's small margins that sometimes win or loses. I mentioned it can be small margins between a dive, between gold medal and silver. It can be small margins between coming off that field at the end of the game and actually thinking, you know what, I've really nailed that game, or thinking, there's just one decision there, I wish if I'd have had my time again, I'd have done that differently.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about that. Do you ruminate on decisions like that? Do you beat yourself up a bit?
I think I've done over time.
Yeah.
I think where I have done in the past is where I've come home and I've had the worst ones to get over almost are if your gut feeling was right originally, and for whatever reason you've made a different decision or gone with a touch judge, for example, has made a different call to what you thought it was.
Interesting.
And you've gone with the touch judge or the video referee or whatever it may be. But when your gut instinct was right initially and you've changed your mind or you've gone away from that, that's difficult then, because you're thinking, I had it originally. I had it. And that's when you do think about it. You're like, if I'd only ever just backed myself and just gone with that.
You know what, Liam? That's so interesting, because I think that's hugely relatable to any walk of life.
Yeah.
Because having that instinct and gut feeling, how many times then do we let our head get involved? Or like you say, you go to other people's advice, their two penneth, their view on things. Oh, okay, that must be right, then I'll follow that.
Yeah.
And you're like, you know inside, don't you?
You do.
But hearing that voice,
yeah,
takes practice, I think.
Absolutely. And, I'm not saying it makes it easier, because you still think about decisions, but if you've completely missed something and you've just not seen it, in a lot of ways, it's easier to deal with, because you can be like, well, I've just not seen it.
Yeah.
Like, I've just not seen it.
I can't reproach myself because I didn't even see it.
Just not see it.
Yeah.
There's coaching elements you can do with that. Well, why did you not see it, etc., etc. Yeah. But it's easy to accept. But it's that gut feeling part that I say in refereeing is that you usually follow your gut. You're never usually wrong. And if you are wrong, well, at least I've fallen on my own sword, so to speak. I've gone with my gut and I've got it wrong, and I think that's easier to get over. But the flip side to that, and this is what you're talking about, the inner voice, and where it contradicts that a little bit. There's been plenty of times where I worked with a pretty close team with a video referee and two touch judges where my initial gut feeling was wrong, and a touch judge just saved me. And absolutely come in with the right decision and got the decision right, which I would have got wrong. So, and the skill to being a good referee is knowing when to back your gut instinct. But actually, I could be wrong on that. Actually, I think he's probably right. And going with a member of the team who possibly has a better angle. So
that's a trick, isn't it? That is a skill.
So that's a skill in itself.
How do you build that? Through experience, probably.
Experience,
time on the pitch,
trusting your team as well. Trusting your team. As I mentioned earlier, we worked together for a long time with your team. Certainly, the two touches had in the grand final. I've worked with them for probably the best part of 8-9 years between them in different roles, etc. But trust is a big one, and I think it's just that understanding of in them moments how convinced are you. How convinced are you? Have you seen it 100%? Who has the best angle? But you imagine trying to work that out in a split second of thinking, I've seen it this way, but he probably has a better view than me there. Or actually, can the video referee help us in potentially getting this decision right? And all the factors and players' body language is an indicator. You subconsciously, what does he? What does his body language look like? What does he think? So all these factors of being get decisions right subconsciously in seconds.
Well, exactly. And I suppose what you're trying to do, aren't you, is when you talk about players' body language, it makes me think of your ability to analyse tens, if not hundreds of data points in front of you immediately, and then know my gut versus, my team members as well and how they can input. But this is all in a second as well.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the challenge to refereeing.
I think a big part as well, Liam, don't you think, is knowing yourself. So I know, when I run Haworths, I know what type of person I am. And for example, let me talk about interviewing or bringing someone new onto the team. I'll often meet people, and I'm overly optimistic about life generally, naively probably, but that's
It's a great quality.
well, maybe, yeah. But always over optimistic, love speaking to people, and always see the best in people, I think. But I do need a sort of check to that, and I'm aware of that because it isn't always the right approach. And I could meet people and think they're the next best thing for Howarths. But in fact, other members of the team meet, we have a second interview stage, and not too sure, Gav, actually, because what about this, this, and this? I'm like, yeah, actually, good point. I did see a little bit of that, but I probably overlooked it because I'm so... So I think a big part of it is knowing yourself, isn't it? And I imagine that applies to being a referee as well, knowing what type of person you are, your inclinations, your personality, your outlook on life, how you tend to view things, and then trying to supplement where your gaps might be with
absolutely
those around you. But spotting that is a big skill, isn't it?
I think it is, and I always think a good gauge of that is your balance between your private life and what you like on the field. So I would say generally, not always, the way I'm off the field is how I am on the field. So I don't put some kind of mask on to be somebody else. I'm Liam in my private life with my wife and family, but equally I'm Liam on the field as well. Albeit I'm Liam the referee, I'm still Liam as a person, and I think that's key. So I'll give you a story. My wife watched a game. It was a couple of years ago now. She was watching it at home with my mum and dad, and there was a point where I'd spoken. Me and a player had a running battle all the game, and she just said to me when I got him, she said, "Oh, you just didn't seem yourself there. You know, you spoke to him. Like it was almost like it just didn't seem like it was you." And when I watched it back, she was absolutely right. She was absolutely right. So she sees this little signs of, but she knows me inside out in the sense of she sees little signs that maybe other people wouldn't. So I think it's a real vital point of knowing who you are off the field, but equally knowing who you are on the field and having the stability in any profession like yours, having that stability of your family around you at home, stable private life. You go out on the field, you perform much better. If your home life's erratic and you're not particularly in a happy place, you're not really going to perform well on a rugby field on a weekend. So that is crucial to it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. What role has your wife played? What's it like being the wife of a referee, a top-level referee?
It's difficult, actually. It's difficult because we met at uni, so we've been together a long time. So she knew me as a referee, but not as what it is now, like refereeing where we started community rugby very much at the start when I was at uni. So she's been part of the journey, so to speak, of watching my kind of rise to becoming so she's seen all the trials and the battles along the way and the good days. She's been with me at Old Trafford, been at Wembley at some massive games, but equally she's been the person that I'm coming home to when it's not gone great. So she's seen it all with me. And I think that is so important that you have that person with you who is your rock almost. So I know it sounds a little bit corny that, but it's
not at all.
It's so important that you've got some and people around you. Certainly a job like being a referee that is so mentally demanding that you can just be like, I'm finding it tough at the moment, or I can speak to somebody, or people you trust for their opinions, and there's no slant on things, or it's going to come out in the media. Liam Moore says this or whatever. People you can just speak to. I think that in any walk of life, that is so important for your mental health. Mental health is something that I'm really passionate about as well. Certainly, as being a referee can be challenging. So
how long have you been, Liam, being a referee as a result of your job?
Yeah, been through pretty tough times, and there's times where you do question over the years, why do you put yourself through this? But absolutely, I always come back to the point of, I love it. I love rugby league. I love the sport, and that's what keeps me coming back. It's that adrenaline of, I genuinely would not have it any other. If I had my time again, I'd be a referee and do it exactly how I've done it. Made mistakes along the way, absolutely, but that's all part of the journey. And it's the fun of being in the great, and what my opinion is the greatest sport in the world.
Yeah, I love that. I think you're totally right, and I don't think you're human if you don't have your moments where you think, why on earth do I bother doing this?
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do.
I've had it. Without doubt. I post on LinkedIn a fair bit. I've posted it on there. I was like, why? I think I put on a sentence a couple of weeks ago, like, I could just get rid of this business I feel like I could just get rid of this business at the moment. You know, you have your moments
Absolutely.
where you're like, you can't do it anymore, or you don't feel like and you have moments where you question, do I know what I'm doing? Do I know what I'm doing with this business? Or have I still got it? Have I still got the energy? And
there's an imposter syndrome though as well a little bit,
yeah,
isn't
there
there?
probably is, isn't there? Do you get that?
A little bit, yeah. I think I do a little bit. Is that you stood in the middle of a game a little bit and you're thinking, God, how do I get it? How did I get here?
What am I doing here?
Yeah, and like from a business, you in a board meeting or whatever it may be, and you are a little bit. I think everyone in to some degree, to varying levels of degree, has a little bit of imposter syndrome. But I actually think that's a good because it keeps you grounded, you know, and it keeps you grounded in the sense that, you know, today might not have been a great day, but tomorrow is going to be a better day, and that's the, you know, for me, a sense of somebody who's pretty strong-minded.
Yeah, agreed. Your brother's a ref as well.
He is, yeah. So you can imagine it runs in the family, so to speak.
Is he older or younger?
He's younger than me, so he's the slightly different background in how he came about refereeing. He played when he was younger. He played semi-pro. Played at Salford. He played at North Wales Crusaders. So had a pretty decent career. Kind of had enough of playing. Really thought, you know what, my brother's a referee. Why not? I'll give it a go. As he was a player, he'd got the skill set already to some degree, but just had to learn the art of refereeing in many ways. But no, he's been doing well. He's in Super League. He's been in Super League for the last few years.
You keep him in check.
Yeah,
the older brother.
Well, often he always keeps me in check now. I think he thinks that the shoe's now on the other foot. But it's great because he was the best man at a wedding last year. So you can imagine a relationship where he was the best man. I work with him, travel to work with him every day.
Yeah,
go out on games with him. So we spend a lot of time with each other, and we was close growing up. Very competitive. So that doesn't help now when you're competing for games as well. So it's kind of gone all the way through. I think it drives my mum and dad mad a little bit, but you can imagine. Speaking from you can understand the feeling, but close relationship with your brother from all the way through growing up to then get the opportunity to work together in a sport that we both love, in some of the best games in the sport. It's brilliant.
It's a privilege, isn't it, Liam? I see it like that. We're a family business, and as we sat here now, I'm looking at my younger brother as well. 18 months difference. But did you fight a lot when you were younger?
All the time.
Oh, so did we.
All the time. We played at cricket, football, rugby in the back garden. It was only a small back garden that my mum and dad had, but we was always like fighting between us. But ironically, over the rules. Oh, it's a try. That's a no try. Oh, you're cheating. It's meant
to be.
It was, but it was no. And there are memories now that you look back on. I'm sure you're the same. But you look back and you cherish them memories when you're growing up and your childhood, and you do get a bit of a lump in your throat when you look back now. I get great pride in watching. I'm sure you're the same with Chris in terms of watching him being successful. That you get a lump in your throat when you watch them go out and you think, you know what, he's done well and he's done it himself. You know, it's through no one else. It's just through their own hard work.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, when we pulled up today in the stadium, we parked outside the Etihad, and we got a quick selfie, me and Chris, with the Etihad we tried to block the badge, obviously, but got a quick selfie, put it on the family group. You know, you'll be the same. We've got a WhatsApp group with all the family in, and it's nice. It's a privilege to be able to do it.
Of course it is.
We've moved on, haven't we, since getting each other in headlocks and WWF wrestling.
Literally, we was the same. Literally everything you can imagine. It was the cricket was always one as well. The ball going over next door's fence, and my mum coming out saying, "Pack it in." So loads of memories. I think two brothers especially. I always think there's a certain relationship there with two brothers of a similar age. There's a connection there that I don't ever think can be broken really when you've grown up together. So some fantastic memories, and take great pride in that. I actually probably get more nervous watching his games than I do my own.
Do you?
Yeah, because you have no control over his games. Where my own, you're kind of a master of your own destiny really. Whereas watching his games, it's you sat at home and you've no control whatsoever.
That's nice, that, Liam. And I think going back to your point, what you said earlier, like the foundations you've got in your private life with your wife, your parents, who I guess you're close with how you talk about them, your brother, and being Liam outside of work and on the pitch, just gives you a solid foundation to then go and perform at the best level in your job, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And you can see and feel that, and you care about it, don't you? Which is which has got to be close to being number one, I think, in your
Absolutely.
job.
And it's sharing them moments with them as well. Like the, a couple of years ago we did the World Cup. The Princess of Wales came, and we got to meet the Princess of Wales and that kind of thing. So sharing them big moments with them that's what for me makes it worthwhile. From the moments of my dad dropping me off at a community game up in maybe Huddersfield Underbank, that are right on in the middle of nowhere in the sticks almost, to then managing to take him to Old Trafford to watch me referee is it's just nice to look back on the journey. It's along the way, and it's certainly no end to it yet. But there'll be a time where I can't do that anymore. So I appreciate what I've got at the moment and just cherish.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say your tender age of 28 and already a top world-class referee in rugby league. Fair play to you, Liam. You've done amazing, and the journey you've got, hopefully it'll last for many more years. But I think you're absolutely right, is enjoying it along the way, because we've all got to do that, haven't we? And I've been guilty of not doing that at times, but you've got to enjoy the journey along the way, haven't you? Because
absolutely. It's
all there in front of you, and you might not get it again.
Yeah, and the good times and bad as well, not just the... it's easy pointing to the great moments I've just done then, but, you've got to appreciate the learning. I don't try not to look at mistakes, I just look at things that look to improve you. But look back, and then you can have some fond memories when you're close to retirement. Or when you're passing the business on to your children, and that's it's special.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that seems a good place for us to finish, Liam. Thanks so much for inviting us to the Rugby League headquarters. We've loved coming here. Me and Chris have got our selfie in front of the Rugby Football League brand, which were brilliant. Thanks so much for having us, and for your time, and for being so honest and generous with what you've shared with us. Thanks, Liam. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Cheers.
Thank you.